Robots Radio presents
the Cyberpunk Lorecast.
Welcome to the Cyberpunk Lorecast, where style is just as important as substance. Welcome to the podcast where we explore the lore, news, and gameplay of the Cyberpunk games and other dystopian worlds. I'm your host, Robots. I always have to air drum the beginning. It's always a thing. If you aren't here live with us at twitch.tv/robotsradio on Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, then you are missing out on my air drumming skills, or you should go check out the videos up on our YouTube. Welcome back to the Cyberpunk Lorecast. I'm your host, Tom, or Robots expert air drummer, and with me today is our expert tuba player, Logan. Welcome, Logan. How's it going?
Good. Although I turned in my tuba, unfortunately, it was getting a little too loud for the apartment. So I'm going to try the cymbal next and see how that goes.
Air cymbals, like the guy who just marches in the marching band and goes.
Exactly. We're going to see how that works.
Okay. I think it'll work. I don't know many hit tunes that use just a cymbal crash every so often, but True. you might be better, more knowledgeable than I am about that.
Well, here's the thing is I saw it on Fortnite as an emote and it looked so good that I tried to find a reason why I could do that emote out in public. And I think air cymbals is my way to go.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
you do you, buddy. Welcome back. That always sounds judgy. I feel like it's one of those things that is supposed to be like accepting, like, yeah, man, you do you. But it always sounds judgy. Anyway, welcome back to the Cyberpunk Lorecast. We are here this week to talk about some really cool stuff. There is some unfortunate news that has hit in the last week, and we need to address it. But there's also some interesting details about some of the new technology that's coming out, and we're going to be talking about our expectations for different platforms that you can play Cyberpunk 2077 on. Is it worth upgrading? That kind of stuff. We'll have that conversation at the end of the show. I also wanted to say that this topic actually came to me because I was interviewed this last weekend for as a guest on a podcast, which it's going to be coming out in a few weeks. I'll remind you guys in the future. But the host of the podcast brought me on to talk about Cyberpunk 2077 and the potential influence that this game will have on not only the game industry, but technology and all sorts of things. It was a really good conversation. I'll share links for that in the next few weeks when it comes out. But he had mentioned that he had some thoughts on it. Like this is a guy who doesn't actually play console games very often, so he doesn't even have a modern console, but he's buying a PS5 and a new TV and a sound system because he wants to play this game. Yeah, he's super all in. So he wanted to hear my thoughts on this, and I was like, it would be really cool for us to tackle a conversation about like what console to get or what kind of upgrades you need for your system and that kind of thing in order to really enjoy the game. So that's where we're going to go with this. But like I mentioned just a minute ago, we have some depressing news. It looks like things are being pushed back again. Logan, what's the details with this?
Well, yeah. This is one of those situations where I wanted to play dumb. I wanted to be like, oh, what do you mean it's delayed? That's I can't.
Oh no! I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing reaction videos to any of these news things, and I'm going to try and film one every day, because almost every day there's some sort of like, what, this thing happened, and I'm going to do the most ridiculous reaction videos. Yeah, that's going to be my new thing.
So if you guys haven't heard, which anyone that is listening to this, if you're in the news like we are, then chances are you probably already heard. But if you haven't, and this is the first you're hearing of it, I'm sorry that it had to come from us. But the truth of the matter is Cyberpunk 2077 got pushed back to December 10th. It is a whole bag of issues.
A whole bag of something.
Yeah. There's so much going around with that. People are canceling their pre-orders. People are sending death threats to the devs, because as we all know, death threats, that is exactly how you get games released. You send death threats and then they release the game because they're scared of dying. Like, that works all the time. I can't think of any game that hasn't been released without death. People, you are dumb if you're sending death threats to devs thinking it's going to change anything. And especially online, it's not going to do anything. Yeah.
Also, just I don't know if anyone's clued you in on this before, but sending a death threat to somebody anonymously on the internet is the most scumbaggy thing you could possibly do. I mean, aside from actually killing somebody, because these are human beings who are working as hard as they can in order to bring you products that are not necessary for your sustenance of like your sustaining of existence. These are for your enjoyment, should you have the money to buy them and the time to enjoy them. And by sending people like that death threats, you are absolutely the lowest form of humanity. And I posted this on Twitter this week. If you are doing that, then go ahead and unsubscribe from the podcast, because we don't want to be associated with you. There is clearly, and let me get to this a little bit further. If that's something that you're willing to do, there's something else wrong in your life worse than the fact that a game got delayed. Go get that looked at. Go get some therapy. Yeah. Go get some help. And it's not that I hate people, and it's not that my point is, one, that is not acceptable, and two, if you have that kind of issue, go get help, like professional help, because you need professional help.
Yeah.
So that's my stance on it.
I've had some people on other media outlets say like, oh, well, this is just like kids. This is just, bored 13-year-olds and stuff.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. But if it isn't, then yeah.
Yeah, I hate to see it get chalked up to one of those ageist things. Like they're like, oh, well, it's just kids. They're just bored. They don't know what they're doing. How it impacts. It's like, no. There's regulations, there's terms of services. Like if that's what's going on, then there has to be some sort of accountability for that. Like they need to get their account banned, or they need to have like maybe their parents sign off or get an email when their kids' account's banned. So they have to be like, all right, well, why did your account get banned? And then they read the email and find out that they're sending death threats. And it's like, all right, well, now we have to have that conversation. Like there's so much going on with this, but I didn't want to dwell on that too much other than just to condemn it. It's weird, because this game went gold. And that really doesn't happen too often. I did some digging after talking to Jameson from the DL podcast on the network as well too, and he had mentioned about how this hasn't happened, and I was like, well, how often has this happened? Turns out it's really only happened maybe a few times in any generation. Like most of the time when a game goes gold, which is the cert required to make sure that the game is in a playable form for the systems that it's going to be released on, has the game ever been delayed? And usually that's just a small delay. Right. In this instance, we found out that the game that was, we found out it was going to be released on the 19th. We found out in a investors call that Adam Kaczynski told investors that they were going to be delaying the game 21 days from the original 19th to the 10th of December to ensure that the game is being optimized for Xbox One and PlayStation 4, which kind of sparked a lot of the conversation that we're probably going to be having tonight, as that is kind of the big question. Like, are those systems, the current gen systems, holding back the game? And I guess this kind of answers it as a resounding yes. And they went in to say, Adam Kaczynski says that it's ready for PC and it runs great on the next gen consoles. He eagerly added that the game could have been shipped to the November 19th if it wasn't for the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. And I wanted to pause there, just kind of get your overall thoughts. Do you think that that's fair if they were planning on making this game for the current gen to not target something that was going to hit a little safer to the original launch consoles? Or is it right for them to target the higher end?
I think that this is a development question. At some point in development, you realize that it's going to launch later than expected. And this game has taken 7 years to come out. And so what I'm saying is somewhere around year 4, you're going, okay, this game's still not coming out in the next year. We should probably start targeting the next gen systems. So that's when you expand development into ray tracing and higher level textures and the kinds of things that a more powerful CPU can do, like more characters on screen, that kind of stuff. So you start targeting that, and now you're shooting for that, and you realize that, okay, this game's going to come out very close to the launch of these new systems. So if it's a launch title, it needs to be absolutely stellar, because in the past, if you have a really solid launch title, that defines a system. That can be a console seller. There's a lot of other business angles to that are extremely beneficial. So it makes sense that that becomes a primary focus. So in doing that, you're now focusing on building out the game in ways that you were hoping to, and we're sure we're going to work on current generations. And so you shoot for that. And then you get to a point where you have to like tone things down in order to still work on current gen consoles, because that's what was already promised, was that this game would work on current gen consoles. If this game launches, and we're going to talk about frame rates and stuff at the second half of the episode, but if this game launches on current systems, PS4, Xbox One, and can't do a steady 30 frames per second at a reasonable resolution, then people are going to be very upset, because they're going to say, well, I can't play this. This requires, shooting targets and driving a car fast and doing these kinds of things. It's as much as it's an RPG, it's also an action game. How do you do that if you can't even hit a solid 30 frames per second? So my assumption is that that's the standard they're trying to hit. And because the game is so large, they need to go through all of these different zones, all of these different quest lines, all of these different areas, different weapons, different vehicles, and make sure that all of these things still work, 95% of the time at 30 frames per second. So, it's a big endeavor. It's a big thing.
Yeah. I feel like I guess my main issue is when did their eyes get too big for their stomach? At what point did they see next gen coming and started targeting, upscaling or better resolution, the 4K 60, things like that. Mm-hmm. When did they get to the point where they're like, all right, well, we're going to target next gen and hopefully we'll be out during that time and we'll plan on that. Did they lose sight of how big their game got, how beautiful their game got, to the point where they started having these issues with optimization for the original launch consoles?
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say, right? It's hard to know.
Yeah.
But there are a few reasons why it makes sense to push for the new generation of consoles. Those are going to be the game sellers. People are going to see the game in all of its 4K ray tracing glory. And even though they can't necessarily afford a PS5 or an Xbox Series X or a high-end PC, they're still going to want to buy it for their PS4, because at least they still get to play it, right? And then they can always upgrade later and play it in even better resolution and quality later. So that's the stuff that sells the game. So obviously, from a marketing standpoint, they have to shoot for that. It's a rock and a hard place.
Standpoint, yeah,
it's a rock and a hard place,
Like, if I was making this game and I knew that we were going to be having it out close to next gen, then we're not even going to be getting the next gen versions at launch. Those aren't even coming until 2021. So they are purposefully targeting the power of the next gen consoles and PCs, even though this game is still going to be played backwards compatibility on the original console or the current console generation. Mm-hmm. And I have a problem with that, and personally, because I'm like, I understand there's 100 million plus PS4s out there. There's 50 to 60 million plus Xboxes out there, and there's tons of PC hardware across the board. Like, if you want to target that generation as your version, then optimize for those versions, and then give us the next gen version after launch, because it's happening anyway. But they lost sight of they got too greedy, honestly, in my opinion, and they wanted to hit something that was going to hit over 4 teraflops of like just raw GPU power based on their minimum specs and stuff for their recommendations. And I just think that they really should have paid a little more attention to what their market was, if that's how they were going to market it, and then promise the next gen once the next gen actually came out. And the delays gave them too good of a reason to pose this as a next gen console game.
Yeah, it's complex. I think it's legit to be upset and say, I'm not behind the scenes, so I don't know all the details about what got prioritized when or how it was done. But I can totally understand being disappointed.
Yeah,
that's fine.
A lot of people will be too. But I mean, it's not for us to defend them. It's not for us to get our pitchforks and torches out and start heading towards the office or anything like that.
Sure,
but
sure.
If we're getting delays because they lost sight of what their scope was, then that's poor management. I have to call them out on that.
Yeah, and hopefully it's a learning thing, and hopefully it's something that they make the mistakes on this time, and they realize that that's a problem, and they make changes and they learn and move forward. That's the most we can ask. I tend to have more patience with this stuff as I've gotten older, because I would rather have a game that plays better and is delayed than something that is rushed out and then I just bounce off of.
True, but at the same time, like I'm going to bat for the angry mob here in this instance. So
sure,
I'm to be perfectly honest, in my situation, I waited till after the game went gold, and I got a secured Xbox Series X order in before I put in 2 weeks of vacation time. 2 weeks vacation time for me starts on November 10th, goes to the 23rd. I was planning on playing all the next gen stuff and then still having a few days after Cyberpunk to really chew into that and just spend a few days just really enjoying that content. My 2 weeks is now totally changed up because I'm not going to get to play Cyberpunk until December, and I'm not going to get to enjoy it the way I was anticipating it. So, and that's a hard thing for people to say. It's like, okay, even on the day before they announced that it was getting delayed, their social media team was guaranteeing that there were not going to be any more delays. That was on October 26th. Yeah. And then on the 27th, they said that they were pushing it out. And then they said that was at the devs themselves found out at the same time that the public did. So right. There's a lot of issues that I have on a management perspective from that kind of thing. And to kind of dive into the investors meeting, Kaczynski even said that they didn't think that the crunch that was going on was that bad, but a lot of people had moved on to other projects or weren't working that hard, and it was really just the QA team that was putting in the long hours. And then later on, it was sent out to Game Industry Biz. They got word from some of the devs that said that he sent a personal email, kind of copying to the poor form on his comments on the investors call. So he does kind of recognize like what he said was a little unempathy. What is the
unempathetic?
Yeah, not. He wasn't being very empathetic to the people who had been putting a lot of time in on an investor's call. So it's sad that kind of thing happens. But this is one of those situations where someone messed up. They only had to plan for 6 weeks of crunch. Now they're planning for 9 weeks of crunch, and I really just wish, I really wish that they had a little better management on this, had managed everyone's expectations, the dev team, ours, everyone's expectations better if they didn't realize this was going to happen. And I kind of want to blame, I mean, tinfoil hat here. I was going to make one. I'm not going to make one because it'd be too loud. Tinfoil hat.
Let's just put things on our heads.
Yeah, I could.
Oh, this is. There you go. You have tinfoil. Okay, that's what that sound was early on. There you go. That's great. I've got my wipe my face rag. I've been working out in the morning. So this is something I was going to mention later. I'm trying every morning to walk on the treadmill and play games. I'll be streaming this during weekdays around 10:30 in the morning. But that's all I've got nearby is a sweat rag to put on my hat. So I wipe my face with it. This is the dirty one I used last week before I got sick. I didn't even take it out of the room. Gross. All right.
Oh man.
Come on.
Okay. Well,
tinfoil hat time. Yeah.
All right. So tinfoil hat time. I really think that they're saying that they're talking about how it's not optimized well for the original PlayStation 4 and the original Xbox One. We just barely got the announcement that this game is going to be running on Stadia. This was not originally a game that was said that it was going to be coming to Stadia. part of me thinks that this deal came in the last 6 months, and that they are still working on issues for it, and that they are trying to they're trying to make sure that Stadia will work well. Because I don't know if you've tried Stadia. I have gigabit internet. I tried Stadia on my Google browser on my computer. I tried playing Destiny 2. It was horrendously laggy.
Really?
And I'm using mouse and keyboard. And I was like, I have really, really expensive internet. I should not have it. It should feel like I'm playing on my computer. And I went and I played it on my computer, and I'm like, no, this is a much better experience. I really can't understand like why Stadia is being praised as much as it is, for people not having problems with it. So I don't know what was going on with that.
Yeah,
but
that's weird.
Tinfoil hat, I think that Stadia is to blame with this, because it should have been held off to next year. I think that CD Projekt Red is trying to capitalize on all the ecosystems, all the platforms that it can. And while it's easy to chalk it up as, it's the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 that we're having problems with. If it's actually Stadia, the people would just come out and be like, cut Stadia. It's it's not a big ecosystem.
Everyone would be like, no, just no. Unless somebody up top made some sort of deal they have to stand by. So that's why I can feel them coming after me. That's why I feel like that's what that does. It increases those senses that you can tell when other people are when the man is coming for you. Yes,
they're targeting me. I can feel their rays. Yeah, no, that's why I feel like if they had come out and said, hey, are you guys wanting this on the 19th and everything, but no Stadia, or are you okay with the 10th with Stadia? Everyone would be like, nah, screw Stadia. We don't want Stadia. Right. Nobody wants Stadia. Only a small handful of zealots want Stadia. And I feel like that's the issue. So that's kind of my thoughts. And I think I'm going to stop there and we'll
off
move
the
on
hat
to something else.
Yeah. Again, we don't really know, but all of these things could be likely. I've mentioned this before. I've worked for companies where the CEO or the people up top are making these kinds of decisions, and they're making them fast and loose. And the people down below, the devs, the people working on social media don't find out until like absolutely the last minute. And that's why things happen where they put out posts saying, oh yeah, this is absolutely releasing on this day, because that's all the information they have. That's what has been told them. But somebody made a decision and hasn't told everyone else yet. And all of a sudden, nope, we're wrong. I fear it's the corporate culture. The corporate culture is just that's the nature of that, And I'm not saying it to justify it. Say it's okay. I'm explaining that that's what happens, and it sucks. And the people who lose out are both the consumers and also the lower level employees, because they're the ones who get thrown under the bus. Why was the social media guy messing this up? Well, he didn't know.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest shames, is that so much of this usually comes down to like, oh, well, the social media team's the one that's going to get all the hatred. It's not going to be, it's not going to, and then to get the death threats and stuff, like that's going to devs, but that's also going to the social media team as well too.
Right,
so
but they're not the decision makers. That's not even like exactly. Don't send death threats, but also, I mean, I guess if you do, at least send them to the right people. That just sucks. It's think about the last time you got called out for something that wasn't your fault, and the person you're dealing with absolutely believes it was, and you're just like, I was doing my best. I was doing what I thought I was supposed to do. It's not my fault. Like, that feeling sucks. Now lay on top of that somebody wanting your family and your house to burn down and everybody to die. Like, what? Because a game got delayed and it wasn't even your choice? I mean, that's horrible.
The one other thing that it was kind of a result of this news was that we recently found out that CDPR stock fell about 25% in 2 months amid all of this uncertainty. So the last time it peaked was when they announced the Witcher Mobile, the Gwent kind of Pokemon Go project that they did. That was back in August. Over the last 2 months, their stock has dropped 25%. And that doesn't really weigh in too much into the scope of things, but it's definitely going to be something where CDPR is going to have to really have to answer to their investors like, hey, you know, we really didn't manage this as well as we could have. And, you know, their stockholders are now losing lots of money over it as a result, and they're losing market cap as a result. So even the people that have been, you know, supporting CDPR as stockholders and stuff, they're losing because of the mismanagement as well too. It's not just the devs, it's not just the fans, but the company itself is losing because of this. It's tough. And at the end of the day, is this going to matter in a year? Probably not, but it's important to kind of focus on this when it's ripe, because we have to make sure that this doesn't happen the way it happened for Witcher 3, the way it happens for, you know, the next DLC. You know, we want to make sure that if we as consumers are playing these games and they shoot us a message saying like, hey, we're planning on having Cyberpunk 27 DLC ready in 2022. We're like, all right, cool. Let me know in 2023 when it's actually ready, and just don't hold them to dates, please. This is why, for as much hate as Bethesda gets for messing up some of their messaging, this is why they don't announce games until a few months before they release. Let me be more clear on that. They've announced that they're working on the Elder Scrolls 6 as a like, hey, don't worry guys, we're still working on this, but they don't announce final launch dates until, like, usually it's within 6 or 8 months of the game coming out. But maybe that needs to be tightened up more. This is, and we are at the front of this horizon of very complex systems being programmed, and that includes video games. In fact, video games are usually the things pushing the boundaries on this stuff when it comes to software. And think about it, like, how many games have taken this long to develop and actually put out into the world? How many games are now over 100 gigabytes in size? I mean, the size of games keeps increasing. The number of people working on them keeps increasing. The complexity of this keeps increasing. So we as the consumers need to support the people who make the right decisions, and we need to, you know, use our money as our vote. And we need to be able to say, you know what, if this is what I like, and so I'm going to support it, and this is what I don't like, so I'm not going to support that. So it's a complex thing, but hopefully the longer this goes, the more it smooths out, the more these developers will know how to keep information under wraps, release information to the right people when necessary, talk about release dates when those things are more certain, all of those types of things. But it's complex. I don't know that I would want to be the CEO of a video game developer. Like, that's a very hard job. But hopefully they're learning, and they're, you know, things like a 25% drop in stocks that's the kind of thing that wakes those people up, because that's hitting their bottom line. Getting a bad news article every so often, that's annoying, but 25% stock drop. Uh-oh, another tinfoil. I see the tinfoil hat coming back. Okay. All right. I just remembered I had another theory that the reason for the delay, the main reason why I think the delay was coming in for December 10th is because it is a month after Xbox Series X gets released and 2 days shy for the PS5. And I think they wanted ample time to make sure that all the news outlets had at least a month's worth of time with the game in preview on the best consoles, so that the Metacritic looks really good and their bonuses look really good. So they wanted to make sure to capitalize on everyone having all of the best trays of racing and stuff. They wanted to make sure that the game was in its best form, and the best way to do that is to delay your game until well after the next gen console launch. Interesting. Yeah, interesting speculation. Guys, if you want to talk to us about this stuff, feel free to jump into the Robots Radio Discord and check out the Cyberpunk Lorecast channel. Send us your thoughts on this. I don't always respond to everything, but I do read pretty much everything that gets posted on the Discord throughout the day as it gets posted. And if I have any 2 cents to add, sometimes I'll jump in. But there's always conversations going in there. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this stuff and all of that. And if it affects your purchasing decision, because, you know, everyone, I firmly believe that if you are upset by this, you're allowed to be upset by it. If this is going to change what you're going to buy and why you're going to buy it, that's totally fine. That's up to you. That's your money.
spend it how you want, just don't send death threats because that's not appropriate. So, all right. Well, we've got some tech specs to talk about and expectations for where you would want to play this. So we're going to get to that in just a minute, but let's go to the middle of the show. Logan's got his cymbals going there. I don't think there's a cymbal. There's not much cymbals happening in that section of the music, but I mean, again,
it was the hat. The hi-hat on the drums. You didn't have the hi-hat. I had the hi-hat.
You're like a walking hi-hat. I get it. Okay. All right. That's hilarious.
I imagine they're made out of tinfoil as well too.
Of course.
So it all works together.
Yeah. So let's talk about patrons. Thank you to all of our patrons who support the show. If you are interested in supporting us, check out patreon.com/Cyberpunk Lorecast. You can get episodes without ads. And there's even a tier where you can join us at the end of the month to talk about Cyberpunk, and especially with it coming out soon. I'd love to have you guys on at the end of, well, it won't be this month, but it won't be November, but it'll be December. And we can talk about our experiences with the game and that kind of stuff. But before that, we can even have a conversation at the end of November talking about what we're expecting and how we're going to be playing it and all that kind of stuff. So go check that out. It's a wonderful way to help support the show. We very much appreciate it. And you can get all sorts of cool stuff. Also, this show is brought to you by the sponsors of the Robots Radio Network, including audiobooks.com. You can get 3 free audiobooks simply by clicking the link and signing up. You don't need to buy anything. So if you want to check out any of the books that we've talked about in the past, if there's any other books that you would like to be listening to while you're riding in your car, you're working out, you're at work, any of those kinds of things, go check that out. It's 3 free books, whatever ones you want. Everything I've looked up has been on there. It's and you can even search before you sign up. You can see if they have your book. So go check it out. Click the link in the show notes and help support the show. All right, let's move on to the rest of the episode. So I mentioned, Logan, we kind of stuck it in earlier in the episode that I've been trying to work out, and by walking on a treadmill while playing games at my desk, I have a desk and I can raise it up to standing level and I can walk on it. And I've done this for a while. I haven't done it a lot in the last year. I used to do it for work more when I would work from home during the day, because I can type emails and stuff like that while walking at kind of a slow pace. Playing games while doing that is a little bit more complex. So the first day I tried it was, what was it? Wednesday or Thursday last week. I'm going to try and do it every day this week. I want to make it a thing. I want to at least walk for an hour. I'm going to be streaming. So if you're in chat, if you've ever been to my Twitch channel, if you've never been to my Twitch channel, I would love for you guys to come by and hang out with me and help support me. There will be some Streamloots cards that do things like make me do push-ups or speed up the treadmill. So those are fun. I'm sure I'm going to get some weird combinations of things like speed up treadmill, play the game with only one hand, and wear your headphones backwards and things like that. And it's going to be just a mess. But so I started with Hearthstone because I was like, I can definitely walk and move cards around on a screen, right? Like I can do that. That was fine. So I jumped into Fallout 76 and just kind of running around in the world doing stuff was okay. Then I jumped into a spec ops level, or a spec daily spec ops, whatever it's called, and had to deal with a bunch of robots coming at me and moving sideways and dodging things. And that got a little dizzying. I almost fell, but I didn't. I've guaranteed my chat that if I fall while playing, that I will give everybody in chat a free Streamloots pack just because I fell. So there's that. Haven't fallen yet. I've got the little cord that daily ops. Thank you, Nekamata. I've got a little cord that attaches so the treadmill will stop if I fall down, but I hope I don't hit my head on anything. So where am I going with this? I'm hoping to be acclimated enough over the next month. So when Cyberpunk 2077 comes out, I can do this. I could play Cyberpunk while walking on a treadmill. It's like rubbing your belly and patting your head, or patting your belly and rubbing, I don't know, whatever.
Okay.
It's difficult.
First things first. I gotta just make sure and assuage the fears of the listeners and myself. Please tell me you have that little waist emergency stop thing attached to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the little, you can see in the camera. This thing. It claps onto my waist. Yes. So yeah, cool. that's there because if I didn't, I would slide off the back of the treadmill and then it would like rub on my body and then tear all of my skin off, and that would be terrible. So no, this thing, I will fall down, I'll slide off the end and it'll stop. So yeah, we're good.
Okay. And then the other thing for two, I have to commend you on your willingness to put yourself through the gauntlet of dealing with stream and trying to walk and play games at the same time, because that is frightening. I know how Twitch chat is. I know how you are, chat. I see you. Yeah. I may not respond, but I see you. I know what you're planning. Don't do that to him. Yeah. I need a co-host.
Yeah, no, they're gonna try and murder me through Streamloot's cards that make me do. They're gonna speed up the treadmill, and they're gonna and then they're gonna put my headphones on backwards, so everything on the left sounds like it's on the right, and then I'm gonna be driving some car through Night City, shooting at people sideways out the window, and my feet are gonna turn sideways, and then I'm gonna just go whoop, and I'm gonna fall down, and I'm gonna die, and it will be your fault. Yeah. So yeah, that's gonna happen. But before that happens, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So you guys can enjoy watching me do that.
So why did you decide that this was going to be the best way to experience Cyberpunk?
Well, it's not that it's the best way to experience Cyberpunk. It's the best way for me to commit to getting in better shape by doing this in the mornings. So this will be part workout routine, part spending time with the community, which I love doing, and part streaming more, which I want to do. It just so happens that since Cyberpunk's coming out soon, that I'm going to want to play it. So I'm not going to want to like miss out on those, the time I'm streaming in the morning just because I'm walking on treadmill, right? Like why should that get in the way? Doing all of this is very difficult. Playing a game is fine. Playing a game and managing stream at the same time and chat. People don't know who don't stream. That becomes very difficult because your brain is constantly going back and forth between two things. Add on a third thing, like walking the whole time, and all of a sudden it's like your brain power only can do so many things at the same time. So that becomes even like I can drum, right? I can use all of my limbs on different rhythms at the same time. I can do that, but it's not easy. And if I was trying to drum and have a conversation while reading something and, I don't know, instructing somebody how to play a game at the same time, that would be very difficult to keep a steady rhythm. That's what happens. So anyway, so that's, if you guys want to come join me, please come join me, twitch.tv/robotsradio. Okay, let's get into system requirements. We talked a little bit about this before. We talked about the 6 system requirements for PC. We mentioned that if you had a CPU that was built in the last 4 years, chances are you're fine. If you had kind of a mid-tier graphics card that has been released in the last 4 years, you're probably fine. Logan, I like what you put here, where you listed out the teraflops from all the different systems. So let's dive into this a little bit. What exactly is a teraflop?
That is, I have no idea. It is the easiest way to tell. Like,
it's a computational metric for for graphics cards, basically. So basically, a graphics card can process X amount of information at a certain rate, right? So teraflops. So for example, a PS4 on this list has 1.84 teraflops. It produces 1.84 teraflops. And Xbox One, 1.4 teraflops. So it's a little bit less powerful than a PS4. Assuming everything else is even, the game settings are all in the same exact setting, the textures are all the same, everything is the same, the Xbox One will perform a little bit less than the PS4 by roughly a measure of that percentage difference, right? So that's what, about 20% slower-ish? Maybe not even. Maybe it's like 15% slower, something like that. So according to the minimum requirements on a PC, they're recommending that you have a PC that can output roughly 4 teraflops. So this is at the low end. At the low end. This is more than double the bottom end of, say, a PS4 or an Xbox One. That is their minimum system requirements for a PC. The recommended requirements for a PC is only 4.4 teraflops. So it's only about 10% more, right?
Oh my God. I can't understand this. It is so confusing to me where I'm like, okay, well, they must have some amazing coders over there to be able to target systems that are sub 2 teraflops for power and on consoles. And then they're like, oh, and then for PC, the low is going to be 4 teraflops. And then the recommended is 4.4. So, and as everyone knows, 4.4 or like recommended is really the low.
The recommended is really low. Low is like, do you want to actually play at all? Yes or no? Okay, so here's my theory on this. Do
you have a tinfoil hat?
Well, yeah. Let me put my put my sweaty face. Yeah, it smells great. It smells good. All right, I'm putting that on my head. Okay, so here's my theory. Yeah. Here's my theory on this. On PC, if you're a PC gamer now, you don't have a monitor that is, if you're 99% of PC gamers now, do not have a monitor that runs lower than 1080p. Yeah. It's very rare. It's very rare that you're a PC gamer with a monitor that runs lower than 1080p, right? And if you play games on PC, you're going to set it at the default for your monitor's resolution, 1080p. If you are a console gamer, you probably have a 1080p TV also, right? But console games regularly will reduce the internal rendered resolution compared to the default resolution of the TV they're on. So if they're shooting for a solid 30 frames per second, which would be the minimum, and they're trying to render it at 720, then it would make sense that they would upscale 720 to 1080 on something like a PS4 or Xbox One. Make sense? But no PC gamer is going to want to render it at 720 and put it up on their 1080 screen, because up close like this, it's going to look like garbage. But for these consoles, there are many games that do that. That's par for the course. So that makes sense to me. That's the difference in teraflops. You like my towel on my head still? I'm going to stack it even higher now. Okay, so here let's take this even further. A PS4 Pro does 4.2 teraflops. This makes a lot of sense to me, because if the specs for PC are between 4 and 4.4, then PS4 Pro, I'm expecting, will be able to render this at a native 1080 at least 30 frames per second. See where I'm going?
It tracks.
And Xbox One X,
I do agree.
6 teraflops. So that means that you'll probably be able to render at 1080 and get to maybe 60 frames per second. Potentially. Yeah. Or at least a smoother, but more likely 40, 50 frames per second, somewhere in there, but a smoother level of gameplay.
Yeah, for that, I think they tend to, because it's mostly going to be, it's either going to be 1080 or 4K. So I think they tend to lean more towards that 4K 30 than the 1080 60 in this instance. So I would imagine most, at least on my Xbox One, I think they were suggesting that it was going to be running at 4K 30,
right?
Which is what I was anticipating.
4K 30, right? That makes sense, because 4K is yes. Okay, so let's keep going with this. So if we get to a PS5 or a Series X, the PS5 is pushing 10 plus teraflops. Series X pushes 12. So now we're comfortably in 4K, maybe 4K 60 range.
I'd have to say at least 4K 60.
But you also have ray tracing, so that's going to reduce rendering output.
True.
True. Both of these systems are going to be pushing ray tracing, which both the PC low and PC recommended settings aren't, and PS4, Xbox One aren't doing ray tracing. So now we have a spec where they're trying to get 4K ray tracing. Also, if they have some sort of setting in there that adaptively reduces the resolution but keeps the ray tracing on, then it's one of those things where it'll try to keep 60 frames pegged even at 4K without having to remove the ray tracing, because that would be the most obvious, right? So let's get into I've got multiple hats on my head at this point. Taking off the multiple hats.
Noticed.
So let's get into ray tracing. What is ray tracing? So ray tracing is this, it's not a brand new technology, but it is the big push for the new graphics cards that are coming out. The 3070s, the 3080s, the 3090s by NVIDIA, RTX cards, even the 2080, the 2080 Ti can push ray tracing, but they don't do it as efficiently as the new system, as the new cards. The new AMD cards, which were just announced and are now getting out there for review, the 6800, for example, can do ray tracing as well. These consoles are built using that technology. So in order to be able to use that technology, they're going, or at least and be able to put out the best graphics possible, they're going to use that technology because that's one of the big selling points. What is ray tracing? Ray tracing is actually modeling the movement of light through a scene. Traditionally in video games, they just have to, synthesize light. They create what looks like a reflection or what looks like ambient lights that are reflecting off other things. Ray tracing actually models the movement of light through a scene so that when you're looking at a reflection in the mirror, you're seeing the lights bouncing from the light sources on the other side of them or on back behind you from the mirror. If you're seeing a wet street, the lights reflecting in the puddles and the ripples of the puddles are actual lights in the game. Even the ambient lights off of things that aren't super reflective, like dull surfaces and multiple lights in a scene, can leave. One example here would be here, I'm turning a light up on my face, right? If I put my hand in front of that light on me, you see a shadow cast from my hand over my face. But there are other lights in my room that are still casting lights on my face from other angles. And I can, all of those shadows are being actually rendered in reality by actual lights and the rays of those lights hitting my face from different angles. Each of these lights is a slightly different color, so it's going to cast a slightly different color on my face. That's also going to reflect through my skin and all sorts of other things. This is where we're going with the technology. This is what's going to make things feel that much more real in this next level of technology. So the idea is that they're going to want to keep that enabled in the new consoles and on high-end PCs. So the idea would be, at least as far as a lot of games have been doing recently, is that they shoot for 4K, but then they can reduce it a little bit when things get really busy on scene without turning off things like ray tracing. Because if all of a sudden the pixel size increases a little bit, you're not going to notice it so much, especially in a really fast action, focused scene. But if all of a sudden the reflections disappear off of the wall in front of you or the helmet on your character, it's going to be super obvious. So
yeah,
that's my tinfoil hat. There we go.
Yeah, there's a lot of tech involved with it. It's much more that involves, how performance works as far as like throwing in dynamic resolution to be able to adjust the resolution of different elements or texture load and not being throttled by the CPU, but also having like dynamic scaling as well to make sure that, or variable refresh rates as well, just to make sure that, whatever monitor you're using, it can try and use ray tracing as much as possible and make up for it in other areas that aren't just going to directly result in a drop in resolution as well, or in frame rate for that matter. Right. So a lot of it just depends on the whole setup. But the idea of having diffuse lighting in a world that feels more real, that isn't just sharp angles because of spotlights and then like a global illuminator, is going to be really nice. It's going to be refreshing. It's going to feel like you're actually going to see around the, if you're around a corner and there's an explosion, you're going to be able to see the light from that explosion, even though you're not directly looking at that light or that explosion. And the ray tracing element is what's going to reflect off of the floor, the walls, kind of bounce that light into your area and illuminate your area as well, even though the light itself is not directly shown on you from that explosion. And right. That's just going to add a lot of information to rendering in games, and it's going to make games look great. But it is a lot of calculations, right. And I'm looking forward to this next generation just purely because of the overhead that they're building with the systems. Obviously, having the higher teraflops and having the faster CPU is really going to make a difference on how easily they're able to render this stuff out and compute it all. And I'm hoping that with something like Unreal 5. They'll be able to really kind of tweak some of the numbers on that and be able to offer ray tracing that is less expensive hardware wise for when games are being done. So it'll be really good to see this come out.
just like any other technology, it's gonna get better both on the hardware side and on the software side as we find more and more efficiencies for it. Sabil in chat says, I don't think we're getting ray tracing update for the next gen consoles until next year. Yeah, that's what I've heard as well. If we get them at all, they haven't confirmed that. I would be surprised that they don't patch it in at some point, because it seems like even if people want options, right? So even if it drops the frame rate down to a steady 30, some people are going to want to play with all the eye candy on, and they'll be willing to play at a lower frame rate. Some people are going to want the highest reaction times they can get, and they will reduce the eye candy. I mean, it's the way people still play Counter-Strike. Some people want 300 frames per second on Counter-Strike, so they still run it at medium or low settings, but some people just like, I'll play Counter-Strike. I'm not a pro player, but yeah, I want the good textures, like I don't want the things to look like garbage on the scene. I don't care if my reaction time is dropped by 30 milliseconds. I'm not that good, So, that's my estimate here. So, I'll tell you what, Logan, to wrap this up, I was thinking it would be fun for us to put together what we think will be the default resolution and frame rate for each of these platforms.
Okay.
And we'll see who's right.
Sounds good.
Okay. So I'll let you go and then I'll go, because I've already thought about this, but and I'm not gonna copy what you say. Like you're gonna say your thing, I'll say my thing. So for PS4, what do you think the default resolution and frame rate will be on average? We're talking average. It's like average level frame rate.
I'm gonna say
we're talking standard PS4. This isn't the upgraded
the launch one.
Pro. This is just launch PS4.
That's tough because it's like expectation versus reality. Do I think they're going to be able to hit 1080 30? At some points, maybe, but
What about
honestly,
average? What do you think average will be?
Average, I'm going to say is probably going to be 1080 resolution, and it'll probably hit around 25 frames average.
1080, 25. Okay, I'm going to say 720. I'm going to say 800, 30. I think that's what they're going to do that. All right, Xbox One. What do you think? Remember, Xbox One is a little bit less.
Yeah, that one I'm gonna say it's probably gonna have to be like 720 30 on that one. I don't think it's gonna be able to handle it for the original Xbox, the VCR.
The VCR one. Yeah, I agree. I'm with you on that one. Okay, PS5. What do you think? And this
PS5.
is at launch. This is not ray tracing. This is not later upgrades. This is at launch, like when it's like December 12th and everybody's done their benchmarks and we get tons of YouTube videos. What do you think the PS5 will be at?
I think they'll hit 4K 60 locked.
4K 60?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would be really surprised if they couldn't.
Yeah, I'm going to say 4K 50 just to mix it up a little bit. Because I
think they're going to dip a little bit.
I'm going to say the average is going to just slightly be lower than that. All right. What do you think for the Series? Okay. Xbox Series S, not the X, the high end one. Remember, so the PS5 is being released in two models. There's the digital one and then the one with the drive. They both basically have the same processing in them. The Xbox is being released at a Series S and a Series X. The S is powered less than the X. The X is the highest, most powerful of the new consoles. The S is slightly below the PS5.
Yeah, if you're looking at just like sheer teraflops, I think the S is 4 teraflops, just kind of base, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've checked, but I'm pretty sure it's 4 teraflops. So I'm gonna say, oh man, just because of the faster CPU, the same CPU that the Xbox Series S has, I think they're going to go 1440 at 60 frames per second.
1440 60? You think that'll be the standard?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the S is going to do 1080 60. I think it's going to be less than we expect. But you could be right. I don't know. All right. Series X, highest end system, highest end console. What do you think it's going to be?
It's got to be 4K 60 locked. I will not accept anything less than 4K 60 at this point.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think 4K 60 is pretty solid for that too. All right, so we have some differences here. We need to come up with some sort of thing. In a few weeks, we'll check this once we have all the benchmarks out there, and we'll see who's right.
Are we basing? Okay, so I'm basing this off of not performance mode. By the way, all of mine was like, if I could have the best looking at whatever the highest resolution was what I was going for. Not
that's fair.
Frame rate.
That's fair. I agree. So that's what we'll keep. So yeah, cool stuff. And we'll have to see. But I think we're pretty close. I think we're in the ballpark.
I hope so. If it's worse, it's going to be so depressing. Like all this time that we've waited and all the pushbacks, and we're going to get less than 4K 60 on the next gen. Like, that's rough. That's really, really rough. The PS4 and the Xbox One, I think, are the two that I want to know the most about, though. I really want to see like how bad the resolution can get in some of those scenes. Because even with like Gears 5 on an Xbox One X, that still drops frames. And it is not locked. And I'm like, man, these are still pretty powerful systems, all things considered. You look at a lot of and this is done from experience with other games. There are a lot of games that don't ever hit 1080 60 on PS4 and Xbox One. They just don't. They usually reduce the resolution and try to hold 60 if it's an action game. But there's a lot of games that just don't. There's a lot of games that just feel choppy on consoles because they're pushing. We're at the end of the console cycle. They're pushing the envelope there. So, all right. Here real quick, I wanted to show before we wrap this up, the Neon Arcade, who you guys should be checking out on YouTube if you aren't already. It's another Cyberpunk source content creator. Has created a video, and this goes back to September, where they show some differences in scenes between RTX on, so ray tracing in the scene and ray tracing not in the scene. So I just wanted to kind of talk through this real quick to give you an example of what this looks like. I'll put it up on the screen for everybody watching the stream and watching the video. And I'll put a link in the show notes. But this is basically the difference here. If we're starting with a scene that looks like a room, it doesn't matter what the room is, but there are some colored lights in the room, and you can see in the room where there are reflections off of like the tiles on the floor. The colors of the lights shine on different fabrics. They blend with other colors. There's a lot of light work going here, and there's a lot of shadow. That's the other side of this, is there's shadows being casted from all of these lights and blending with other shadows. The scene looks very real to the way a room would actually look if you had lighting set up just like this in a room. So this is from a 2020 video. Now, this scene here is the same scene from 2018 without ray tracing enabled. And you can see lighting in the same places. There's still lighting in different locations, but all of the lighting is different because it's not actually reflecting on the ground in the same way. It's not casting shadows in the same way. You can see how this is obviously not as accurate as it would be in real life or in a scene where the lights are being reflected. And here's the two scenes side by side. And again, if you want to check this out on YouTube, go to the Robots Radio YouTube. You'll see this up, and it'll come out the same day this comes out for everybody on the podcast platforms. But I think this is a wonderful scene to just show the difference in the two renderings and how that creates a certain realness to things, even not talking about reflections and mirrors or anything. This is just colored lights in a room. So there you go. It's definitely a lot more ambient too. And they've done a lot of work between the two builds to really kind of touch on just some of the UI choices that they've made in there. But I think the feeling is that it's going to feel more real or more, I guess I'm trying to think of the alive is a good way. When you have good lighting and you can set up a room specifically and you can really kind of tweak the numbers on some of the lighting and stuff, it can really create an atmosphere that I think that they're trying to achieve. And I think that the ray tracing is clear that is going to make a big difference based on just what we've seen from some of the stuff that they've shown 2 years ago to this year.
it's that level of, and we were talking about this with the facial animation. It's that uncanny valley level of difference that like we as human beings are used to the way things look in the real world. And even if things look different in a video game, sometimes we can't pinpoint like why that is. This is one of the whys. When the lights actually work the way real lights work, our brains don't have to suspend disbelief as much. All of a sudden it looks way more real to us. So again, exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to it. I fortunately have a 2080 Ti graphics card I bought a while back. I'm getting it fixed right now because it was like spinning up. I would do the simplest things and it was just like overheating and spinning up full, like well past 100% fan speed.
Oh man.
So which means I think it came disconnected from the core, or the coolant wasn't good on there, but I wasn't gonna, invalidate the warranty by opening it up myself and fixing it, even though I probably could, just in case it was something else. So I sent it back. It's now been like at the manufacturer for the last 2 weeks. I'm waiting to get a notification that it's shipping back to me. So, but I will be able to turn those graphics on. I just don't know that I'll be able to turn everything up all the way. And I'm definitely not going to be playing at 4K because I've got an ultra wide screen that runs at 3440 by 1440. Yeah, poor Tom, right? Like these are first world problems. I'm not trying to complain, but I guess on some levels, it's kind of nice that it's being pushed back a little bit because hopefully I'll have my graphics card back by then. That's such a sucky way to like screw everyone else in your vacation time. No. At least I'll have my graphics card back.
This is one of those weird situations where it's like it's a blessing in disguise because it gives me an opportunity to try out games that I honestly was going to pass on because I'm like, no, I don't want to start Assassin's Creed Valhalla before Cyberpunk 2070 comes out. I'm not that's a dead game in my eyes. And now I'm like, yeah, I got time. I could do Destiny and Assassin's Creed.
I could play 20 hours of that and try and get through the main storyline. Sure. Tom pushed back Cyberpunk. There's still so many good games out there. And we mentioned this before, World of Warcraft, it got pushed back a little bit, but I'll have time to jump into that and play through maybe the new campaign stuff. Every so often about that though. Every so often I jump into a new World of Warcraft campaign and at least play through parts of it. There's updates for Fallout 76 coming with the Brotherhood of Steel. Who knows? It's supposed to be by the end of the year, maybe. So maybe that'll come out before then. I don't know.
There's Hyrule, the Calamity of Ganon. Calamity's coming out too.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm going to have to get that for my son for his birthday.
So much good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. I won't.
Don't yet. So we can play it together. That's the other fun thing about having kids is you can buy them birthday presents that are actually for you.
Yeah. Like Mario Kart Live.
As long as they still like them. Yeah. 39 days. We'll be there. We're going to make it. Lots of other games to enjoy in the meantime. And as usual, guys, I'd love to hear what you're playing. We've got a channel for that on the Discord as well. So jump in and let us know. Logan, anything else cool going on? I know that there was some really fun Halloween-y stuff going on in Sea of Thieves.
Oh man, I've been having a good time in Sea of Thieves. We've been running around, we've been killing skeletons, we've been lighting lanterns and being all spoopy. But the main thing is I partnered up with the Red Diamond Courier this week to do a Halloween swap, and I dove into ESO for Elder Scrolls Online for the first time, and that game is so much different than World of Warcraft. I'm so confused. Yeah, but yes. I had a really
it is.
I never played much of Skyrim, and I never played any ESO. So like everything's different and awkward. And I feel like a teenager who's like trying to figure out all of these emotions I'm dealing with right now. But go over to the Red Diamond Courier if you want to hear my thoughts on ESO, and definitely jump into the Keelhauled podcast if you want to hear the Red Diamond crew and their experience with trying out Sea of Thieves after all these updates and stuff. So other than that, just hit me up on Twitter at CAPT_LOG. Or in the Discord. I always appreciate seeing your guys' comments.
For sure. And we had some other shows swap as well. So if you're interested in any of that, check out, just jump in the Discord and ask about it. We had one of our movie podcasts swap with our Chad of Fallout 76 Story podcast, which is like voice acted and all that stuff. And we have that crew doing a movie review, and we have the movie review crew acting out a Fallout situation. Can't wait to hear those. Those are going to be awesome. I was going to swap with one of the other shows, but between everything I've been going through and also with all the migraines and crap, I just haven't had the capacity to do it. But I'm working, guys. Come help me work out. every morning. It's going to help me. It's going to help me physically be in better shape and mentally be in better shape, and I'll be able to keep making more content. I really look forward to hanging out with you guys in the mornings, and I'll be back tomorrow night for the Fallout Lorecast, because every few days, Sundays, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we've got a show in the evening. So come hang out with us. Thank you, chat, for being here, and everybody else for supporting the show and just being awesome. This community is great, and we look forward to seeing you guys again next week. All right, guys, take it easy. See you later. Stay safe in Night City. Thanks for tuning in to the Cyberpunk Lorecast. This show is a part of the Robots Radio Network, smart podcasts for interesting people. If you'd like to help support the show, please tell a friend and leave a 5-star review on iTunes. If you'd like to get in contact, please send an email to cyberpunklorecast@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter @cyberpunklore. Also, join the community on the Robots Radio Discord. The link is in the show notes. The music on the show was written and performed by The Midnight and was used with their permission. Go check them out at themidnightofficial.com. Until next time, stay safe in Night City. We'll talk to you later.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.